So there are a couple of queries that I've received on topics that we have already covered and asking for some more details on certain very specific points. So let me address those points here in this lecture. There are primarily two things that I intend to look at. One is about invitation to treat. You might recall in our lecture on offers, the second point we discussed about offer was that offer needs to be distinguished from certain concepts, and amongst those concepts were invitation to treat. The question essentially that we'll be looking at today is that even though there were four things that the law considers as invitation to treat, which are primarily advertisement, display of goods in shops, auctions and tenders, can these four things or either of them ever become an offer? That is to say, instead of being treated as invitation to treat, as we have seen the law normally does, can they become an offer at any point in time in any way? That's the first thing we'll consider in this lecture. Secondly, unilateral offers or unilateral contracts. That's something that is also going to be the subject of this lecture. Let us first look at invitation to treat, and can those four things of advertisements, display of goods in shops, auctions and tenders, can they ever become an offer? Let us remind ourselves the definition of offer. The definition of offer was offers are definite promise to be bound on specific terms. The idea was that we were making a commitment on very specific terms so that tomorrow, if we did not come good on that commitment, the other party could take us to the court. Invitation to treat, on the other hand, was a special device that the law had created, because if you would recall the example I had used then, that let's suppose, want to sell a car and I place an advertisement in Dawn Sunday classified section, I would not want multiple acceptances. I have only one car to sell, I can only have one contract, and so therefore, if my advertisement in the newspaper was seen as an offer, I would run the risk that 5 or 10 or 15 people could respond to my ad and could respond by saying they accept, in which case I would have 5 or 10 or 15 contracts, which would be a problem for me because, as I said, I only had, let's suppose, one car. Therefore, to solve this problem for me, what the law did was the law called the advertisement invitation to treat. In other words, the law called the advertisement offers, invitation for offers, soliciting offers. So when you see that newspaper, you're actually seeing people asking for your offers, not for your acceptance, but asking for your offers. And it is then for you, the general public, to make an offer, and the person who placed the ad would then decide which of those offers would he want to accept. And so therefore it gives the control back to the person who is placing the ad. So as you can see, invitation to treat is primarily a practical measure which helps people who are placing advertisements, which helps people who are shopkeepers who have displayed goods on shelves, for instance. It helps auctioneers, it helps people who are placing tenders. Ultimately, they don't get bound by multiple contracts. So the fear behind this concept of invitation to treat is the fear of multiple acceptance. But what if this fear is not there? What if there's a party that is placing an ad in a newspaper and that party doesn't care about how many acceptances it gets? What if Honda or Toyota place an advertisement in the newspaper saying something like unlimited supply? For you want a Honda Civic, for instance, you just need to place an order and that's it. You will get Honda Civic, unlimited supply. We don't care how many orders do we get, 1 million, 10 million, a billion, let's suppose. If this is how the advertisement is structured, if the person who is placing the ad does not have any fear of multiple acceptance, and that we can tell from the wording that he has used, if the wording is such that unlimited supply, or conversely it could be first come first serve basis. If you think about it, that's another way of cushioning your position, because what you're saying really is that Well, if I only have one car, it's only the first person who comes up with an offer who will get the car. So any other person who contact me afterwards, I don't have to worry about him because I had already stipulated that first come, first served basis. You might have seen many stores also have things similar to this when they say first 10 customers would get special discount. What is happening in all of these cases is that fear of multiple acceptances is being tackled at the point of the person making these statements. Law doesn't have to intervene. Law doesn't have to help him out. That person has taken care of his own concerns. By using appropriate words, he has made sure that he is not faced with a scenario where there are multiple acceptances. There are more acceptances than he has products to sell, for instance. In such a case, law does not intervene. In other words, in such a case, the law says your advertisement has just become an offer. There's no need for us to protect you. There's no need for us to use the concept, the device of invitation to treat. So when Honda or Toyota places that advertisement in the newspaper saying unlimited supply, the law says this is not invitation to treat. You don't need our protection. You're sorted. Because it seems by writing these two words that you've taken on that risk and you're happy to take on that risk. There's a case that you would see in the notes that I've given to you. The case is Carlyle versus Carbolic Smoke Ball Company Limited. That's a good case on point. What had happened in that case was that Mrs. Carlyle bought a product, and that product is something very similar to what we do also even till date. This case, Carlyle versus Carbolic Smoke Ball, is a very old case, 150 years old. But even today, if somebody has flu, in times of corona even, people take steam, okay, and it is considered that steam helps you. It helps you through it. It helps you with the flu. So there was this company called Carbolic Smoke Ball Company, and that company manufactured a smoke ball, a round object, which gave off smoke. And the company was very confident of its product, and it was so confident that it placed advertisements around the city saying that whoever purchased our product and used it will be cured of flu. And there were certain other diseases that they had mentioned that the steam could cure. And they said that you use our product and you'll be cured. If you're not cured, we'd give you £100. And considering that this was a case decided 150 years ago, £100 in those days was a good sum. But they didn't even stop there. They said, not only will we give you £100, but we want you to take us very seriously on this. And to show our sincerity, we have already opened a bank account and we have already deposited £1,000 in it. £100 is what we will give to you, but we have deposited 10 times that much amount in a bank just to show our sincerity. So the message that Carbolic Smoke Ball Company was giving to the public at large was, you use our product and you will be cured. And if you're not cured, you'll get £100. You will get £100. Can you see the sense here? It's pretty much the same thing that we were looking at when we were looking at the definition of offer. Definite promise. Mrs. Carlyle bought the smoke ball, she used it, she wasn't cured. So she asked Carbolic Smoke Ball Company for £100, which is when Carbolic Smoke Ball Company refused to pay £100. Their defense, they were saying that, look, we advertised that if you are not cured, you would get your £100. That was just an advertisement. And they said the law about advertisements is that advertisements are just an invitation to treat. We are not bound by it. You, Mrs. Carlyle, when you purchased the product, you made an offer. And now that you are here and you're asking for £100, that's just part of your offer. It's up to us whether to accept or not to accept. Yes, we could give you £100, but we have decided not to. Mrs. Carlyle went to the court. The court had now to decide whether the original advertisement was an invitation to treat or an offer. If it was just an invitation to treat, the company was right in not paying £100 to Mrs. Carlyle. Because as we have already seen, invitation to treat is not binding. It's just an invitation for offers. But if that advertisement was an offer, was a definite promise, then the company would be bound to pay Mrs. Garland. The court held that normally, yes, advertisements are only invitation to treat, and the reason is that people who are placing advertisements usually have finite supply of products and they can't be saddled with the responsibility of multiple acceptances. But the court said we have to look at the wording used. And in Carlin and Carbolic Smoke Ball, the court said the kind of wording that the Carbolic Smoke Ball company had used suggested that they were very confident. They were taking care of their own concerns. They didn't need law's protection. When you use words such as £100 guaranteed to be given to you to show our sincerity, we've opened a bank account, we've deposited 10 times more amount. Essentially what you're saying is that, look, don't see this as just another invitation for offers. This is an offer. This is a definite promise in its own right. And so therefore the court concluded that that was an offer and Mrs. Carlin was entitled to £100. So yes, these four things can also become offers in appropriate cases depending on the words. The second thing we had to look at was unilateral offer. They're offers in all respects except that in unilateral offer, acceptance is simply done by doing whatever the offer had asked to be done. For instance, a classic example of a unilateral offer is if I lose something, let's suppose somebody loses a dog, and he puts up a notice somewhere or places an advertisement that whoever finds the dog will get 10,000 rupees. That's a classic unilateral offer scenario because the only way to accept this offer is to find the dog. That's it. You don't have to communicate, you don't have to do anything, just find the dog. Anybody who finds a dog will get 10,000. So that's what unilateral offer is. That one person who made the offer, he's bound at all times to give 10,000 to any person who finds the dog, but none of us, the remaining public, is required to do anything about it. We don't have to go out to look for the dog. But if we do, we will be entitled to 10,000. Just a couple of things about unilateral offers that require consideration. One is that, what about the case where people have started looking for the dog, and let's suppose they've perhaps spent days looking for the dog, only to find that the person who had placed the notice, the owner of the dog, decides to revoke, decides to cancel the offer. Is that right? Is that fair? Because those people have spent time looking for the dog. And maybe they would have found dog had the offer remained open for a little bit longer. The law says yes, the law understands the issue, and so therefore the law on unilateral offers and acceptance on unilateral offer is that an offer which is unilateral cannot be revoked once people have started acting on it, once people have started doing exactly what the offeror had asked them to do. So those people who are looking for the dog will be allowed to continue looking for the dog for a reasonable time period, of course. They can't be allowed to keep on looking for like years and years. But for a reasonable amount of time period, they will be allowed to continue with their search, and the owner would be forbidden, would not be allowed to revoke his offer. The second thing that we need to know about unilateral offer, so the first one is that acceptance primarily can be done within a reasonable time period, and the owner is forbidden from revoking his offer before then. The second thing that we need to know about unilateral offer is that the acceptance is a continuous act. So for example, if somebody were to find the dog and were to bring that dog to the owner's attention, also the owner sees somebody bringing the dog to him, that the owner again is forbidden from revoking his offer. The acceptance is basically a continuous act. It starts when somebody started looking for the dog. All the while when the search was continuing, the acceptance is continuing as well. It finishes when the dog is placed in the owner's hands, or whatever the terms of the offer was. At that point in time, the acceptance is complete, acceptance is continuous. Of course, the acceptance must be done with the knowledge of the offer. If somebody just found the dog without even knowing about the offer, he's not entitled to 10,000. As long as he knew about the offer, he finds the dog, brings it to the owner, if that was the term, he is entitled to his 10,000. So knowledge of the offer is important, even though there might be other reasons also why perhaps that person found the dog, but as long as he was aware of the offer, he'll get his 10,000. That's your unilateral offers.